Good to see everyone. It's Mark Devey, head of Perkiomen School. I'm fortunate today to have an opportunity for us to get to know Phil Lloyd, class of '65, former board chair, present board member at Perkiomen, and he's an important member in our community, and we're really excited to get to learn a bit more about Phil. So, Phil, good to see you this morning.
Thank you.
At our school, in the past few years, part of our emphasis has been growing the institutes. We started with entrepreneurism and then grew into the Medical Institute, and then out of that came a focus on artificial intelligence. Now, you grew up in a different time, and Perkiomen was a far different institution. But in your own childhood, you had some really interesting experiences that in so many ways draw on the types of things that we're including in our institutes, where students are getting hands-on experiences, real life experiences that allow them to get a sense of how to manage and take on the challenges of not just things intellectually or from a book, but through their real day-to-day life. Tell me a little bit about your own upbringing and the raising of cattle in your family.
My grandfather Lloyd, who was my absolute best friend growing up, he lived 100 yards away from my home, and I spent a lot of time with him. He had a 4th grade education, but he had a mind that was tremendous, and he was entrepreneurial, and he taught how to be an entrepreneur. And how he taught me how to do that was we were in the cattle business and the horse racing business. And on the cattle side, he would go to the sale, take me to the sale, and he bought cattle. Well, this particular time when I was about 12 years old, he bought extra cattle and said, "Those are your calves to raise and to eventually take them to the sale." He taught that you never name an animal because it's a business. It's not for your friendship and your love and care. It is a business. So he gave me these 6 calves, and my job was to feed them every day, twice a day, morning and night, but also feed his. So he got me to feed his at no extra cost. And he had me raise these cattle until we raised them to the point where they could go to the sale and be sold, which he made me do. And then after the sale, he sat down with me and said, "Okay, here's how much the feed cost. Here's what your other expenses were. Here's your profit." And he would teach that to you, kind of like your current entity that you have.
Yeah.
He taught how to be a business person, how to make money, how to live and make money. And he did that again with me with a racehorse. He gave me a racehorse as a foal and said, "This is yours to raise, but you got to take it to the sale." And so I raised it, fed it, groomed it, and then I took it to the sale in Delaware, Ohio, and sold it. And then he sat down with me again and said, "Okay, let's look at what your expenses were, and let's see what profit you made." And he would do that all the time with you. So in a way, he was an entrepreneurial person who was teaching you how to survive and how to earn a living through work, through effort, and understanding that you were in a business, and this wasn't about having a friendly dog in your house. It was a business.
Yeah.
And so I learned this at a very young age from him, and he was my very best friend.
Yeah.
When I was 16 and I got my driver's license, he had me become his driver when I was not in school. And I would go to the barns with him where he would buy and sell things, and I would sit back and listen to him negotiate buying and selling things. He just taught it in a different way. And I think your program is starting to do the same thing, because people can put their hands on it, learn about it, and some things are going to work out, some things don't. So he was a great entrepreneurial spirit in my life.
Well, that experiential learning, we know, is incredibly effective with people of all ages. And clearly, those lessons that you learned as a young person were things that you carry through to this very day. I'm sure you draw on those experiences.
It is.
Yeah. So one of the things that I enjoy about our entrepreneur program is that when we have students that are starting a business, they do really get to see all sides of it, which is what you got exposure to. So it isn't just coming up with an idea, it's the costs that go into that and the number of different entities that you need to be considering when you look at that. So it wasn't just the cost of the feed, it was the time and energy you put in, the commitment to that, and all the other extraneous costs that go into that whole process. And those are things that you learned about. So you also had in your living room, you have a couple of saddles as well. So and that was a reminder of that time in your life. So you grew up riding?
Because we're in the horse business and the cattle business. Horses and dogs were part of my life, because my father and my grandfather would go to Chicago, to the Chicago stockyards, and at times they took me with them. Or we'd go to West Virginia and buy cattle by going to the different farms that they would buy cattle. And what he would do is he would make sure that I was having a learning experience, even though I didn't know it. So when the cattle from Chicago would arrive on a train, they would come to a railroad crossing and a road, and they would dump the cattle out onto the road. And we had to herd those cattle for about 5 miles to where our farm was. And that was done by horseback, and that was done by dogs who herded. And so in my young years, I was a part of that process. So the saddles that are in my home on display were my grandfather's saddle and my father's saddle. And it's reminiscent of part of my life that was really important, because actually being outside, learning how to control an animal by another animal was an experience that I've always remembered and I always really cared about. So those saddles are there for my memory's sake.
Yeah. That's great, Phil. So when I think back of my childhood with my father, it would be commonplace for him to come home during the summer and he'd say, hop in the car with me. And we'd get in his old beat up school station wagon and we would drive to a diner nearby. And oftentimes we would go to a place that had ice cream, which was a daily part of our diet in our family. But we would go to a diner and it would be in one of the small towns surrounding Bethlehem. And we would sit down and my father would talk with everyone and develop this wonderful rapport with the people that would be next to him or the people that he met walking through the door or the personnel and staff at the diner. And we would do this all the time. And it was a great way for me to get to go out and get something to eat. And now that I'm here at Perkiomen and I'm in Pennsburg, I've drawn from those lessons and understood the importance of being part of a community. So, it's on a regular basis, I go to the local diner here and spend a lot of time just being present. And it is during those moments that I've developed a lot of good relationships with the local folks. And so I go to the Valley Cafe and have developed a great relationship with the owner and all the staff there. and they're part of my extended family. And the mayor and I will sit and have breakfast there. Our present board chair, Jim Finnegan, has joined me for breakfast there, and now every couple of weeks we have breakfast there together. So that allows him to also develop connections within the small towns. And so we don't always know what we're learning when we're exposed to those things as young people, but those are great lessons to draw from as you grow older in your profession. So Phil, when you reflect back on your Perkiomen experience, can you remember anything that might have been a defining moment or something that was a powerful memory that you have that you still hold on to?
Well, I remember very specific teachers who tried their absolute best to bring me from not a great student to a better student. They did accomplish that. Part of that was the small classes. You have to understand, I grew up in Austintown, Ohio, where the school system was Austintown Fitch High School. And if you didn't play football, basketball, or track, you didn't have any sports whatsoever to do. I did play in the band, but that wasn't fulfilling. I came to Perkiomen and I began playing soccer. I learned to be a wrestler. And I did some track in the spring, but it really gave me an outlet that wasn't available to me in the high school that I would have taken. And the other problem was the high school in Austintown. The majority of the young people's aspirations was to go to work for General Motors at Lordstown, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Paint bumpers in simple cars, retire at 25 years, and do nothing. And my mother said, "You're not going to do that." And so I ended up at Perkiomen, where she was absolutely right. I was put into a new culture that didn't exist where I grew up. And that culture was study hall every night, except for Friday night. I had access to teachers to help me. They cared about me. They tried to see how they could expand my educational learning experience. And they did a really good job, because I probably wouldn't have gotten into the school that I did. I would have probably gone to Youngstown State School.
Yep.
And bless my mother, she said, "That's not what you're going to do." And so Perkiomen gave me a foundation of study habits that got me through Ohio Wesleyan University. And the other person that got me through Ohio Wesleyan University was my wife, because her attitude and judgment was, we're going to have a date, but it's going to the library. And no, you're not going to sit across from me. It's going to be, you will be at one cubicle and I'll be at another, and I'll see you in an hour and a half. And she taught me that I needed to be disciplined and continue to study. It's amazing what you can learn when you read and study. And so I've had a lot of really good opportunities that came about from that very foundation that I got at Perkiomen. I have a friendship still with my former roommate, who was my roommate 2 out of my 3 years, and Ted Fowler. And so there's relationships. There was a foundation on an education, and they actually made it so that I could get into a good school and go. And then Ohio Wesleyan gave me the opportunity to go to law school, and law school gave me the career that I've had. But it all blends together.
Yeah, that's
Great. So even during this pandemic, your wife is still guiding you and helping you through this challenging time. What expectations does she have of you right now, Phil? What does she stay on top of you to do each day?
Well, actually, she has, well, I run the family company, so I'm still doing that, and I can do that from my office, which is 1 mile away, or I can do it from home. But the other part of it is she's had me clean things that I put off for actually 15 years. And I have now cleaned my workshop, and I have cleaned the utility room. Everything's put away. It's all put where it should be.
Yeah.
And she got me to do that. I sorted through paperwork that was sitting, got that done, and my 3 walks a day, every day. And I've already had my first walk today. So we do 30 to 35 minute walks, and we do 3 of those a day. And I think she goes with me to make sure I don't cheat. So I don't sit on a bench and wait for the clock to go by, but I actually do it. So it's been very beneficial because my stamina is far better, my weight's better, and I actually have better stamina to do the work that I've always had to do.
Yeah.
But I will never retire because I don't believe in retirement. I believe you just change what you do.
Right.
You and Carly, whom I interviewed first, when you stepped down as board chair, I was very fortunate to have you as my first board chair here at Perkiomen. When you stepped down, you were generous enough to step in and co-chair our capital campaign with Carly Fain. And, she's a wonderful contributor to this community and a graduate as well. Tell me, from those experiences, your life experiences that you had with development, tell me a couple of the things that you've done that are memorable, that gave you a sense of what philanthropy is about and how you can help develop and build and strengthen communities.
There's a number of things. I've done so many things.
Yeah.
And I've had the great opportunity to do it. I was thinking about what were some of the major projects that I have been involved in, and these are all ones where I was either the chair or the co-chair. And the ones that have stuck out is, and these all come out of my mother-in-law, who would put me up and nominate me for a particular board that she was extremely interested in, and she said, "You have to go and help that place. They need your help." And so the Akron Art Museum, I was actually president twice, and I actually co-chaired a major campaign to design, build, and pay for a new art museum, a very modern one. And we raised $44 million, and that $44 million, we were told by the experts we could only raise 20, and we didn't listen to them. We raised $44 million, and that art museum was built with no debt, and today that art museum is surviving because it has no debt.
Right.
And so that was really a major fundraising activity that I got into. The University of Akron, because that's where I went to law school, I've become very, very involved at the University of Akron. And they started out with a $500 million campaign, of which I was co-chair of. And we ultimately raised $600 million in that campaign. And that has helped that university. They now have an endowment of a little over $250 million. And in today's environment, that is so critical. And I currently am the chairman of the board of the foundation where that money sits. So my fiduciary duty is to see that it remains intact, and we're providing that money to the university. So there's another $600 million. I was involved at Mercersburg Academy of their campaign of $300 million, and they raised $301 million. So there are the three biggest. But some of the things that I have done in my time giving charitable time. And I go back and I thought about one of the most satisfying, there are two really satisfying ones, and that is I was asked by my mother-in-law again to get involved in United Cerebral Palsy. And that's not something that I would have normally done. But because she asked me, I went on the board, and I became president, and they were losing money. And we did a merger with the United Services for the Handicapped. So we put the two together, and I lost the straw vote to be the president of the new joint organization. So the day that I took over, both organizations were in deep financial trouble, and I was given the opportunity to solve their financial issues, which we did. And we were able to bring them out financially. Tough decisions, but today they're strong, they're doing well, they're serving the community. So that basis of helping them, not with dollars, but how you reorganize an entity and make it so that it can have more revenue than expenses, we were accomplished. The other one that it was very satisfying for me was I went on the board of the Akron General Medical Center, a major medical center here in Akron. And eventually I became chairman. And when you became chairman, you were required to commit 5 years. So I was practicing law full-time and being at the hospital tremendous amount of time in running and overseeing that hospital. And that gave me the background of a large board, large issues, but as well as learning about medicine. And so I've developed a great love for medicine because of that experience.
Right.
So I've had great opportunities over the years in giving me opportunities to use the skills that I have, that I learned partly from my grandfather, and leading institutions through very difficult times, and doing it in a way that you make as few enemies as you can, but helping them understand what you have to do. And so I've had great opportunities, but it goes back to the basis of the foundation you got as a youngster.
Right.
Well, that's you've had an incredible life, Phil, and one in which you and your wife have both been so kind and generous and dedicated to help to strengthen some of the entities around you that are meaningful to you and to your mother-in-law. And but it's frankly it's remarkable what you've accomplished, and it's with that confidence that you step into those roles. But you're also a really incredibly humble, soft-spoken man, and yet clearly one of the most critical elements that you're speaking about is you have a candor too, where you get down to the issues at hand, and those are really the ways to tackle these things. You can't walk around them. So give me an example of the qualities or the challenges, the things that you draw on that have helped you be successful with those the causes that have had challenges. Like, what's your go-to? What are you best at doing?
I'm going to go back to my grandfather, because he taught me how to listen, he taught me how to evaluate, and he taught me how to make decisions. And that has been a basis of my life, of being candid. Some have said brutally honest, but at the same time, you have to decide what is important and what is not. Sort through the issues, pick out the ones that are going to make a difference, and move forward on those. And my law career was in finance. So I represented financial institutions, and I was constantly put in positions where I had to evaluate a failing company that the bank had a loan at. I had to, with people at the bank that I worked with, determine how to best extract the money out of so that they could get paid. And sometimes that meant closing down a company. Sometimes it meant going in and teaching them how to resurrect a bad situation and make them survive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned through 44 years of doing that with financial institutions, one of which I went on a board, and I was on their board for 26, 27 years. But the reality is my financial background, with the background that I got from my grandfather on how to negotiate, how to convince people your position is the right position. It's a combination of things, but
Yeah.
Again, it is the raising. I was raised in a household where we were in business. Dinner time at our house wasn't talking about sports. It was talking about the business. How can my mother and father make the business better? It was about marketing. It was about expense control. It was about revenue generation. And it was interesting that there were 3 children in our household. My oldest sister and I acquired that same culture, but by the time my younger sister came, who was 5 years our junior, she didn't get that. So 2 out of the 3 of us were exposed to our mother and dad talking about the business that they ran and the problems they faced and how they resolved them. My little sister, she became an opera singer. She didn't do any of that. So it's interesting how life experiences change your life.
Yeah. So one last question. And first of all, it's been a pleasure, as it always is, to spend time with you and learn more about you, Phil. When you think about, through your own life experiences, what kind of advice might you give a student or a member of the Perkiomen community today about the importance of being courageous, or once you assess the situation, to take a calculated risk? What advice might you give?
During our lifetime, and this is something I tell young people, is there will be doors that appear, and have the courage to open that door and walk through it. Because if you don't, you'll never expand your horizons, and you'll never take risks, and you will always stay where you are, and you won't advance. Those doors just appear, and they come about out of nowhere. Open that door, walk through that door, and experience what's on the other side of that door. Yes, it's frightening. Yes, it's new. But guess what? You just might find something that's really important to you. I've had so many doors in my life open for me, and I always walk through them in order to see what was on the other side.
Delighted to spend time with you, Phil. It's a real privilege and wonderful to hear stories about your youth and the impact they've had on you, and the gifts that you've given in so many ways to Perkiomen School. And look forward to seeing all of you soon at the next episode. Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome. Good day.
Thanks, Phil.